Before we begin, two messages. When my company needed to develop a key mobile product, one that I was counting on as a new source of revenue, I knew exactly who to turn to. Macadamian. They delivered on time with incredible attention to detail, and I was able to get product into customers' hands faster than I ever thought possible. I've personally known them for 10 years, and they do make great products even better. Check them out at www.macadamian.com. What mobile platform do companies like eBay, NBC Universal, the Los Angeles Times, Razorfish, and PayPal use to build their cross-platform native applications? Titanium by Appcelerator. They aren't alone. There are now over 25,000 apps deployed by Appcelerator, which has been called the Rosetta Stone of app development. And you can start now for free. Just go to www.appcelerator.com for more information. Hello everybody, welcome to Untethered.tv. My name is Rob Woodbridge, your host. This is that place you come to, as often as you want to for these great stories about entrepreneurs that are paving the way for us to use these great services on our mobile devices, television sets, whatever, connected device. I really appreciate you coming back to this. I got a great guest here all the way from San Francisco, California. The company's name is Life360. I'm here with the co-founder and CEO, Chris Hulls, who is going to enlighten us a little bit about this story. I'm a parent. I know there are lots of parents out there. We worry about our kids incessantly. It's always on my mind when I'm not with them. And I've always thought about, how do I embed a chip? How do I get them tagged? How do I get them so that I know where they are at all times? And Chris's company has a little bits and pieces of this. And there's lots of competitors in this space, but these guys have some great backing. And I can't wait to hear this story. So I'm not even going to go into it any further. I'm going to bring Chris in, say, Chris, and thanks for doing this. Really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
So you were before we even get into anything, talk about the company. Explain what Life360 is, and let's actually get a little bit of your elevator pitch.
Sure. So our goal is to turn the smartphone into the ultimate safety device. So where's your family? Who's around them? What are they up to? Is everybody safe? But the bigger vision extends a lot farther than that. We're looking at consumer security as this huge $30 billion a year industry, everything from home protection, property protection, reputation, identity. And we see very little innovation in this space given how big this is. Yeah. And we see the smartphone as a wedge into this broader market. So with Life360, we envision things like control your home security system from the phone, find out where your car is from the phone, all without any new hardware, get emergency help if you need it by being connected to a live person, all from within an application.
I mean, it's a very broad vision. And I suppose you've got to start somewhere, right? Isn't this the entrepreneur's curse where you've got this great, huge vision and you can think of everything that you could do, but it's really about taking that first step on getting to that path, isn't it?
Definitely. And we've learned the hard way of trying to bite off too much initially. But right now, we're being very, very focused on just nailing the core use case of using the phone to know where everyone in your family is, know where they've been, and answer the question, is everyone safe? And sometimes we get pushed about showing early revenue traction, try to validate the bigger picture, and we're telling people now, especially investors, no, that's not what we're doing. We're focused on building an engaging product. That will all come later.
So many questions here all of a sudden pop up simply because you do have this broader vision, and I think that the challenge that a lot of companies do in the mobile space that they have is that they don't have a broad vision, or they want to be the photo sharing app, right? It's a broad vision, but it's a limited one train or one track vision. When you're out pitching the company, because you raised some money, and we'll talk about that in a second, but when you're out pitching the company, you pitch that grand vision, right? You're not pitching that look, this is a great way to track your family.
Yep, exactly. And so it's a double-edged sword. I mean, VCs will say they want the big vision, the big swing, but then if you pitch the big one, you might get hit for lack of focus. So it's a fine balance.
So they say, look, don't talk to us unless you got a platform. Don't talk to us unless you're going to be driving to $100 million. Don't talk to us about this at all. And then when you go in there and talk about that plan to get to $100 million or to build this platform, where you've identified the niche that you guys have and the market that you have, which is a big, broad, big revenue-wise market. They chastise you for lack of focus, right? What's your first step?
I don't blame the VCs. I know it's fun to make fun of them, call them myopic, but they're seeing so many deals. Yeah. But so they have to think about what is the traditional path to success being, because they're trying to fit you into a box, and for the most part, they are evaluating you within a traditional framework. So I think it's tough in mobile when there really are very few success stories outside of the trendy companies like Foursquare and all that. So there is no parallel yet.
It's really interesting. I didn't want to dive down this so soon, but we're on this topic because around investors and around the way that they do put you in a box or pigeonhole you, because they're evaluating so many businesses at any given time. I saw a staggering statistic about the number of companies just in your area that are funded. I think 846 companies were funded in San Francisco, in the first half of this year, something ridiculous like this. It's an incredible number. And and it's like 2 out of every 100 are getting it. So I can't imagine, it's just constant, right? Yeah. But do you ever look at that and say, look, how do you rise above? Like, you have a great idea, you have a great vision, you have a great team, you've got traction in the market, but you get lumped in with a bunch of other guys that are crappy. And then how do you rise above that to really show that, listen, no, we don't fit there. We fit over here, and it's a much bigger market. That's got to be the biggest challenge.
So much of it is the cycle and herd mentality. And sometimes it works with you, sometimes it works against you. So we're kind of getting to experience some nice schadenfreude. I don't know if I'm saying that word right. Yeah. Where the tides have kind of swung in our favor, where people are starting to question all these Me Too businesses. So at the initial rise of this big mobile explosion, people wanted the next photo sharing app. They wanted the next social app, and that's what they were explicitly looking for.
Right.
So that hurt us big time because we are not sexy. We're boring. We're never going to be the cool kids at a party. And it really did hurt because people wanted the Me Too app. I mean, they're never going to call it the Me Too app, but they called it an investment thesis, right? Yeah. So we didn't fit within it. But now that the pendulum has swung the other way, and almost everyone's saying, there's so many companies all doing the same thing, we are actually one of the few people in the mobile space with very few competitors. I mean, there are people that overlap us. I mean, the biggest one, I'm sure we're going to get to it, is Apple. They have Find My Friends now. But if you compare us to the social networking type apps, or the discovery apps, the rating apps, the sharing apps, we are in an empty space. And I think that lately we've just had so much investor interest, but it went from almost nothing. So it's,
let's get into that. You guys aren't the cool kids at the party, but you're tracking the cool kids at the party, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the. This is a different state than we're in right now, and there's a little bit of unease around what's going on the investment side. I've seen some numbers where investment has gone down, especially in Silicon Valley. But where you started with this idea in 2008, like, you were talking desolate, right? That it was the 8th year in a row that they said this is the year of mobile, which it never materialized. Yeah. The economy was tanking everywhere. California's basically bankrupt. Investors aren't putting money into this, and you say, "Hey, I'm going to start a business in this space," which was a little bit ahead of its time. Talk about those formative years.
Yeah, well, the idea actually came much earlier.
Yeah.
I had the idea in college after Hurricane Katrina in 2005.
What was it about the hurricane? Just the stories of people looking for family members?
Looking for family members, being reconnected, and also looking at what the government was doing. So the government said, we need to use technology to make sure this doesn't happen again.
Yeah.
So they launched something called Ready.gov, which was their technology preparedness initiative. And it's a website where you go and essentially download emergency plans. But what they have you do is you download these PDF forms, and you literally get your scissors and a pen, and you cut out the card, and you write your emergency contact, and they'll say, make sure to put someone at least 300 miles away so it's outside of the local disaster area.
Come on, really?
And over $1 billion of spending on this. And that was within the first year. And it's still up. They're spending hundreds of millions of dollars a year promoting this site.
And you literally print out your name and mail it to a
still
relative?
There. go there right now, ready.gov.
I'm
You
gonna
get
check this out.
pull out your scissors, cut out the card, and they're lauding it as a huge success, but literally in the billions of dollars. So the initial inspiration was, how about a system where using a phone, we could take a text message, because I had the idea in 2005, way before apps, and we would collect that at a server, take your location, if we get it from the carriers, and then send it to everyone in your family as many times as it would take to be received, and bypass downed infrastructure that way, instead of your kid pulling out maybe a soggy wet card at this point from their backpack. So it's nice that Life360 is, we're doing good, and I like that about what we do, but the inspiration was more my libertarian side, just like, you got to be kidding me that the government's spending money on this.
Yeah, I mean, it's good where you can cross the libertarian do good with the, hey, generate revenue, capitalism side as well. It's probably a conflict, but if you're doing good, social good, while you're actually building a company, you've got a basis for something. So, but you started this in 2000. You founded it in 2008. And you launched in 2009. Yeah. What was that like, going out there and pitching this idea? Yeah. Well, actually, were you looking for investors right away, or did you start the company with an idea and we're going to go out and build a product first?
So there's a bit more of a backstory to it. I mean, I started dabbling around with it after I had a bit of a cancer scare, which is fine now. That's why I was doing banking before that, and so I had some off time where where all of a sudden I found out I was fine. So it was great. Just got this scar here as a memory.
Wow.
But I definitely wanted to see if this could be a big business, because I'm really not interested in something that was a lifestyle business. And so we started asking around, looking, kind of, is it slow start versus all of a sudden saying, all right, we're doing this. And I was actually planning on going back to business school, and ended up giving up on that to start the company. Got a deferral, which is nice, which I've since given up. But
it's always a fallback. That's good.
Yeah, well, it's gone now.
Yeah,
I'm all in.
You're all in right now, aren't you?
Yeah. So we definitely wanted money, and I was a business major at Berkeley, so I thought I knew something. And then I worked at Goldman.
Wait. Say that again. You were a business major from Berkeley, so you thought you knew something?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, and then I worked at Goldman in the tech group. So I was working on companies' IPOs and raising like hundreds of millions of dollars. So, and you might think, I mean, it's logical where you might think that would help, but it was the most worthless thing ever.
Wow. So you thought, listen, you got the idea, you take a pause from your life to deal with some health issues, and then you wake up at the other end of the side and say, listen, you know what, I want to give it a go. And you want to leverage what you've learned already at Goldman and through your education, and you kind of wake up and you realize it's not helpful at all.
No. So I mean, I have like a 20-sheet financial model from before we had our first dollar of investment.
Nice.
The biggest waste of time.
So just overcomplicated.
Yeah, I mean, everything was modeled, amortization, depreciation of desks, and it's just everything. So that didn't help. And then in the investor side, bankers aren't people. They have a lot of money, but they're not really people that know startups.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't even know where to start. And it's a lot different than today when you have these incubators that will basically shepherd you through the process.
Yeah.
And as a business guy, I did not know how to get any tech done. So our first investment was actually $20,000 from an old teacher, and then a few grand from my mom, and I wasted most of it on Indian outsourcing. So it was just a disaster at first.
So you don't have a tech background. You have a business background, and you raised a little bit of money from an old teacher and your mother. And then what were some of the lessons that you learned about outsourcing without the knowledge on the technical side?
Well, it was at the time. I never read TechCrunch or any of those blogs, and I thought you had the idea and you just pay someone to build. Yeah, exactly. So
was it that you didn't have the specs right, or I mean, you can spend a lot of money on outsourcing and not get anything because feature creep, or you don't have a clear enough vision around the technology.
I think I had the misguided expectation that they could actually help you develop a product, and it was a lot easier to develop a good product than it is, and could communicate to other people. What's clear in my brain, I've learned now, isn't everyone else is just so much stupider than me. They can't figure it out, I guess. But I'm just kidding on that one. But general communication it's still something that we struggle with now. It's just very, very hard to get all the moving parts right and build a good product. And to do that with a team that barely understands English,
Very difficult.
where they're not trying to, I mean, some people say they're scammers, they try to steal your money. The guys we worked with were great. Still stay in touch with them. If there was a small limited project, I'd use them again, but it was just one of those things on both sides. We were immature and didn't realize what could or could not be done.
Yeah. So, I mean, so you blow through the early investment, and then, and what does that leave you feeling at the end of that?
It's what I expected would happen, honestly. We're not rah-rah. I just always figure we're going to explode miserably.
Nice.
So it's what we expected would happen, and we'd keep trying and figure it out. And at the time, it still was not the most serious thing. I had my business school fallback.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're pretty persistent, so we just kept trying new things. And Google started the Android Developer Challenge right around then, right after I wasted that first chunk of money.
Perfect. So there was another.
And we did have a working back end from it. I mean, we hacked together an emergency messaging system that sort of worked.
Yeah.
But
so did you went through the Android Developer Challenge, and what happened there?
So it seemed like the perfect opportunity to really build a product that was in my head.
Yeah.
Because even when we started, the iPhone was just coming out. You couldn't really do much with the apps. But the Android, the big talk about background tracking, location, and all that, it seemed like the perfect platform to make this much more seamless. Because we were initially starting SMS-based.
Yeah.
And so they were offering this big $300,000 grand prize. And I thought, why not go for this? So I probably had $5,000 in the bank, and I just posted on message boards that I wanted to enter this challenge, and will you join me? And found developers to work for free in exchange for some equity and a piece of the prize if we won, and we ended up winning. So.
Come on. So you sourced it based on you sourced your developers that way. Say, listen, hey, I want to enter, but I'm a business guy, don't know how to do this. Technically, yeah. I'm looking for some people, so basically technical co-founders, right?
Yeah. Well, these weren't even co-founders; they were still like kind of contractors. I'm still friends with some of the guys. One person was in Portugal, one person is Southern California. So they were never going to be part of the team, but it was by winning that they got us the credibility then to find the right people.
So you won the $300,000.
Yeah.
How did you split that?
Beg your pardon?
How did you split that amongst the developers? Did you pay them for their time?
A formula, so half was going to stick with the company, then half would go pro rata based off the hours you worked on the project.
That's awesome, man! That is an incredible story.
Yeah, it was a very, very fortunate. But that was one thing where being a business major actually did help. I think I was a little less naive and a little more naive is not fair, but. A little more conniving and thinking being able to think what really matters for a contest. I looked at it as a contest. This is what it was, not an engineering project.
Right, right.
So at first, when a lot of people were doing the same thing as me, but they would on the message boards they put I have a secret idea. It's so great I can't tell you, and make you sign NDAs to even tell you what they're doing. But
that's terrible.
I did a whole entire spec and I just put it here. And this is what I want to get built, kind of screen by screen. It wasn't great, but it was
enough.
At least you could look at it.
Yeah.
And then the final entry didn't even work. Half of it was literally slideshow. But we did a really nice tour for the judges. So it looked highly polished, even though it didn't really work.
Oh, it's too late now. They can't get the money back, can they? You can
can't get it back. But a lot of the other entries were, the coders were talking about all the cool tech stuff they were doing and all their compatibility. But I think they'd missed the point. The point here is to impress judges and showcase what this phone can do, and not what the phone can do now, but the phone can do in 5 years. So we had a feature in the contest entry, which was an automatic crash detection based off acceleration. So we put in this we found an animated GIF from some airbag commercial and talked about how our app would detect a crash just like a sensor and automatically call the police. Didn't do anything. It was purely fake, but it was.
But it was vision.
Yeah, exactly. We said this is what Android can do in 5 years, and I think it will do that in 5 years.
Absolutely. Well, an accelerometer, you go from 100 kilometers or 100 miles an hour to 0. You know that there's suddenly something happened.
Exactly. And so to make that a reality, we're still a ways away from it working because you can't leave the CPU on monitoring fine-grained changes in accelerometer without killing the battery. And they're not quite sensitive enough. But you can see that in time it'll be there, and things like Life Alert, which is the I fall and I can't get up company, senior citizen monitoring. It's going to be a smartphone that replaces that sooner or later.
Well, it is, because it's going to do their glucose and their heart rate and all that kind of stuff as well. So you won that, and then now you got 150 grand, and then you start the company. Is this how it goes?
Yeah, well, the company is already sort of working on it, but that's when it's like, all right, let's go all in on this, because that was enough to get people interested, and we started meeting people along the way.
So investors, you're talking about.
Exactly. Well, yeah, and just trying to, people could help us, and Berkeley gave us a spot in their incubator, which was literally just, here's a basement to work out of, and then we entered the business plan competition they had there, which is actually was for the most part a waste, but a couple random connections, and one thing led to another, and it is how we ended up meeting a lot of our investors.
So one of your investors, the founder of 500 Startups, Dave McClure.
Yeah.
How do you bump into Dave McClure, and how do you get him involved and excited about what you're doing with Life360?
So we met Dave before he was
Dave McClure.
Yeah, he was still Dave McClure. People knew him. He had his claim to fame then was he invested in Mint.com, and he was definitely known. But when I met him, I had no idea who he was.
That's the best situation to be in, right? So.
Yeah, well, I got introduced to him by Evan Williams.
Ev Williams.
Yeah.
So how do you know Ev Williams?
I don't really know him. I sat next to him randomly at the dinner table.
Okay.
And Dave was sitting next to Ev.
What year are we talking about?
2008.
So this is well, I mean.
They were getting hot, but neither of them
really were at the point where they are now.
Yeah, exactly. So that was actually from a follow-up from the Berkeley Business Plan competition. So we met, one of the judges was Mark Jacobson from OATV.
Yeah.
And then O'Reilly has a thing called Foo Camp.
Yep.
In Sebastopol. And there was a startup camp thing they were doing as part of that. So he invited me to that. He had a dinner for O'Reilly affiliated entrepreneurs, which Ev Williams was from O'Reilly. So there were just a table of like 10 people, and Ev Williams sat down. I didn't know who he was either. I think I might have known roughly who he was, and I just heard it Twitter. But definitely not a celebrity. So I sat next to him, and then Dave was sitting next to him, and they were just chit-chatting, and he introduced me to Dave.
So you're sitting next to Ev, who's sitting next to Dave McClure, and it's serendipity, basically, that it puts you at this table. And
exactly.
And, I mean, I think that's the beautiful thing about Silicon Valley, San Francisco, the Bay Area, right, is that serendipity really plays... you can have serendipity around the world, but when you're in the core and the hub, that kind of connection between a guy like Ev Williams and a guy like Dave McClure, the degrees of separation, not that far.
Yeah.
You're gonna.
Well, once you get plugged in, it's so easy to meet anybody.
Yeah.
But for us, our serendipity, I mean, neither of them were huge celebrities at the time. So a lot of it was, I think people meeting other people today. They're probably, both of them were well known, but they're probably well known people you bump into today that you're not that excited about meeting them. But within a couple of years, a handful of them will be the next celebrity. So just worked out strange like that.
It just worked out. So but you convinced Dave, obviously, to did you go through 500 Startups? Were you incubating?
We are now, but but he invested in us initially through the Facebook Fund and Founders Fund.
Okay. But
he was an advisor for maybe 9 months before he invested. It was not overnight.
It took a little bit of time. So is he still active with you guys? Is he playing a role with you guys? Is he an advisor?
Well, 500 Startups is still an investor, but he has 200 startups now. Yeah. So we definitely used to spend more time with him, but he's very explicit about, now that he's part of 500 Startups, if he's not on your board, he's going to use the mentor network.
Yeah.
So... And he's done a good job of putting some pretty good people together. Well, so we definitely use that.
I mean, it's just what a great story, though, because the kind of a failed attempt to outsource. I just picture we might as well. We got $5,000. I got B school behind me that I can just go back to, so we might as well enter this contest. I'm gonna basically crowdsource for some developers. Here's the spec.
Yep.
You turn that into a win because you come at it from a different approach, from a business approach. I got to win this competition, not I got to build a cool technology. I got to win the competition. Yep. And then you go through, I mean, what you've classified, maybe not the best business plan competition with Berkeley. You sit next to Ev Williams, who's sitting next to Dave McClure. The next thing you know, you're invested in. You got Facebook, the Facebook Fund, Founders Fund. You got 500 startups. Dave McClure involved. Just sounds like this ball rolling down the hill, gaining momentum and steam all around this idea of tracking people, right?
Yeah. Well, when we started, it was a little bit different than just tracking. It was because it was too early for that. So even though that was in our head, the pitch was a bit different because people you couldn't sell that idea yet because it wasn't clear that was going to be possible. So the initial pitch was much more around, well, talking about biting off too much. It was almost a one-stop shop for your safety and security needs with this as a linchpin. So our mobile app did not do well when we launched. It was a complete failure because it was just...
What was it?
Well, the app was very similar. There were changes around positioning, how well it worked, but we only launched in the G1, which everyone knows is a crappy phone, and it was so unreliable. Part of it was just, at the time, not the best engineering. Part of it was just the phone being bad. We'd kill your battery in like 2 hours. But the bigger thing, though, is you only get deep engagement with our product when you have your entire family linked to it.
Right. So basically, a party of one does not help. Exactly.
And we thought, hey, it's validation, they get something, but it was always a thorn in our side. So for most of 2009, 2010, we were trying to do more on the web because that's where traffic was, and we could actually do something. So we always had the mobile piece. It's what we always wanted to work, but we were trying everything under the sun to bring people into our service without the smartphone. So our emergency messaging system, as much as they make fun of the government for their cards, we had our own emergency messenger card where it was a real card. I might have one.
It was a real card as opposed to something you had to download, print, and cut out.
We had both. It was in parallel. So I have, here's mine. We called it the Life360 ID. They're still on our site. So if I needed help, someone could call that number, access my emergency information, and after a big emergency, I could send a text message by following these instructions to our server, and we would blast that out to your family as many times as it would take to get through.
And that was the unique differentiator. I was about to make fun of you because you just told me that you went through this whole process with Katrina, and this was the government's response, which was to print out a document and send it to somebody 300 miles away. And then you fall back into that, except for you added a little bit of a text messaging. What were you thinking when you went through that? It's like, this is not what I want to do, but it's like a necessary...
Well, we always knew it, and I mean, it is a huge differentiator to send one text that goes to your whole family, phone call, email, text message all at once. So it did solve the problem of actually using technology. But if you're too early in the market, I guess we just the app didn't get traction.
Yeah. But that's the difference between push and pull, right? So 2008, 2009. There weren't, for example, every device didn't have GPS. You didn't know what was going on. The iPhone had just come out in 2007, but nobody really knew what this meant in the app world. Nobody saw this coming, and anybody who says that they saw this coming is full of it, right? This took everybody by surprise. But that's the difference between push and pull, right? Is that you're pushing this on people, you're changing behavior. But flash forward a couple of years, and now it's like the behavior's changed. Everybody's basically walking with their heads straight down. We still
are in that transition point. Because I think there's when you look at smartphone apps, especially around tracking, I think people make a bit of a flawed assumption around total addressable market right now. So if you look at smartphones, everyone's saying it's 40% of new sales. Some people say as low as 20, some people say 50, whatever. Yeah. So for our app, people then assume, that means 40% of families should be able to use your service. But that's actually not true because the math is, if you say 40% penetration, you have 4-person family. It's more like 0.4 times 0.4 times 0.4 times 0.4.
Right.
And that will actually get you something that's much closer to the true percentage of families that have multiple smartphones. So for people like us, we're still so early in this market. It's much easier to get people in the door, but for something that requires multiple actors within a group, it's still early, and it's a challenge.
So what do you do about this? Because look, what you're selling is, I mean, I've seen a lot of companies selling, personal safety devices where they're basically keychains or GPS enabled keychains or cellular enabled keychains, and they're looking at different ways of doing this with another device because of those. Like I'm not going to hand my 5-year-old kid a smartphone, right? So, you know, how do you kind of penetrate the family, convince somebody to get involved with this?
Yeah. So we actually have more spouse-to-spouse tracking, purely because it's a little more common for two adults to have phones. And it's usually not like I don't trust you. I use it on my girlfriend just to make sure she got home, got to work, and that's generally what the use case is. And then on top of that, we recently, about 4 months ago, launched a service that does allow you to track feature phones without the app. It's a paid service because you have to pay the carriers.
Right.
But it has worked where you could get the two parents with the smartphones, and then once they see that works, they have the kid with a feature phone, they'll pay for that service.
They'll just enable it, yeah.
Yeah, and so we do, and that's worked really well. We have thousands and thousands of paying users on the feature phone service.
I guess the key with the way that you guys approach this is, listen, don't go and spend $200 on a separate device that you have to carry around. You're already walking around with a smartphone or a feature phone. Just leverage that tool that you're already using, right?
We actually do have a device that we sell. We've been selling less of them now that we have the feature phone service. But I think we have seen, and something it's a little disappointing to me, how tough behavior change is. Yeah. And when you put the friction point of a hardware device, you're going to lose a lot of people.
Right.
So I think there's still a market. I think pet tracking will eventually be an interesting one.
Yeah.
The devices have not been good enough yet, but so I think it'll get there.
It's pretty interesting. So you've tried everything, haven't you?
Yeah, we've tried everything.
It's like absolutely everything: devices, cards, but what? Like, you're now in this business, and I mean, you've got families, you've got thousands of people paying for the feature phone set. You've got thousands of customers that are using it for free. It's free, right, on the smartphone?
Yeah, we just crossed 5 million families.
Yeah, so these aren't thousands. You got 5 million families using this.
Yeah. Well, and we've also done things, you know, so we realize where we are in the market. So we've tried to do things like, how can we make our app useful? How can we establish a footprint before the whole family gets a smartphone? So we've done things like even find the closest hospital or police station. And it's a very simple feature. Anyone could build that overnight, simple API. But it brings people in the door and it gives them a reason to come back to the app in the interim. So are we going to build a big business off that? No. But what we can do is capture someone's attention. We get their email. We give them a decent experience. Then as their family gets the smartphones, then we start upgrading them to becoming more power users, if you will.
Well, and great transition. I mean, I love the flow of this conversation. You've been so honest about this. I really appreciate how you've talked about this, Chris, because it's a great story, man. But now you've got all these families. You've got 5 million families that are using this in various states. You're adding these services, which are great. Value add, you know, I love the idea of these devices as personal safety devices. It's so important, and especially peace of mind as well for the parents. How do you convert this? You've got the for pay on the feature phone, but who knows how long those feature phones are going to be selling? How do you monetize this?
Well, I wish the feature phone piece would die and go free.
I love it.
And then also take along the people that charge for that. I want them to go away with it because, I mean, location will become a commodity, and I think anyone who tries to sell location is doomed to fail. Yeah. Especially from a phone. It's going to.
So how do you make money?
So we will never charge for the location. As long as we break even on that, or even loss leader, completely fine. But imagine where this could go. How about tracking your car? How about having the ability to push a button, get connected to a live operator, kind of like an OnStar,
definitely.
Emergency medical evacuation, even little simple things like if it's on a phone, a concierge service, you need a reservation. It's all those things that they make sense within the context of this application. Or if you just want your kid to always have a lifeline where they can push a button, be connected to someone trained to help you, real value in that. Or controlling your home security system from within the app. It'll make the product better, and we'll be able to market it because you're already a user.
So my guess is that you're using the 5 million families, and you're gathering those 5 million families to sell them these services later on, right?
Exactly. And we'd love to do it now, but we need to nail engagement first, and we need to nail the product first. Then we're going to monetize. I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but I think after we did our seed round, we were bullied by investors to prove monetization. And we did a lot of stupid tests to do it, and I think they made nice charts, but it was a big waste of time.
So you tested a few of these things, like charging for location?
We do things like landing pages around Google AdWords, bringing people through flows, try to measure the costs, and really it was just distracting us from the product. And I think this is going to work or it won't.
Yeah.
And we're trying to find investors who just believe in that bigger vision and are willing to take that risk and realize it's better for us to be putting our money on nailing the product, which is a necessary precursor to any significant monetization anyway.
So I just want to get this. You look at what you're doing now with the tracking and the family tracking as almost as the foothold into the rest of their
Yes.
personal and property security and leveraging their location to offer services around them. Is that right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, I mean, I love that. I love that. But I mean, you're really tugging at the heartstrings, aren't you? When you say, listen, it's about security.
Yeah, and that's going to be a differentiator for us. We don't want to be a friend tracker. We might have some social features, but we are security first, social second, versus I think most other people in the space, it's social first and everything else is the adjunct. So the core value prop is always around, is my family safe?
Is my family safe? And I think that's got to be very clear. And I notice we're rapidly running out of time here, but I've got to ask you, and I think you alluded to it before. Listen, location has gone from the darling of the ball, something that you think you can charge for, to now kind of dial tone, right?
Yeah.
Facebook, tagging everything with location, getting out of the check-in business, and now they've kind of got into this find my friend business, which on first blush would be, I guess, would you would think that this is a competitive threat if we just didn't go through this conversation. Right. But what else keeps you up at night around this kind of stuff? Because when there are still people out there charging for location.
Yeah. So the people charging for location, I'm much less worried about. So the carriers all have their family tracking service. It's it's a bigger company than us, but still sort of startup, Location Labs. They have a very different philosophy to the business. We think they're making a ton of revenue now. Good for them, but I think it's going to be something that they're not going to be able to grow because they're going to get chipped away at, whereas we're going to probably have a lot less revenue for a while, but I think we're building something that's more sustainable because you can't fight the ocean. And when the location is going to be free and you try to charge for it, it doesn't work forever. So
it doesn't seem like it can, right? Because we're now getting past that where a lot of these guys are saying, okay, so location is free. Now start to innovate on top of build something of value.
We feel very indicated around that because it was always a core tenet of our pitch, and we kind of got, we got so much from investors like, well, why don't you just charge for it? You can make a lot of revenue right now. People will probably pay for this. And we said, like, yes, people probably will pay for this service. We can probably charge for this. We can have 1 year of great board meetings for all the revenue we're getting, but then it's going to hit a wall, and we're going to slowly fade out of relevance.
Yeah.
I think the Apple announcement really, we feel like, all right, see, we told you so.
Yeah.
You cannot charge for this. So I'm very happy we didn't build our business around a model that required this to be free because that's happening. But when we look at the Apple announcement, I'm not going to lie and say it's not scary to have someone as big as Apple in our space.
Yeah.
And if we go to an all iOS world, this would skim off a ton of our users.
Right.
I think even though the value proposition is different, a lot of people will see this as good enough even with our richer feature set.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have accepted good enough, right? We went from wanting to watch video on a 42-inch HD screen to where 55 or 60% of video is now consumed on a mobile device. Little crappy YouTube videos. So we have accepted good enough, haven't we? Just
But the fortunate thing I think is Apple has a history of doing everything iOS only.
Yeah.
And the number of families where everyone has an iPhone-only device is exceedingly low. I mean, I don't know what it would be, but it's I would bet it's under 5% of the country.
Well, yeah, everybody's got their own personal taste. I have one question that I just want to finish off. What about IP? So, I mean, you were very open about it. You said, listen, when you were sourcing your developers for the Android challenge, you said, okay, here it is. This is what I want to do. Come and help. What I mean, do you look at securing IP? Do you look at patents again on what you're doing?
Our core technology really isn't anything special per se. We're doing a lot of tough stuff, but we're not necessarily pushing the boundaries. We actually just did recently, we're hearing we're being issued a patent that kind of almost covers a geo-aware panic button. And it's something I filed before the company started. I wanted to look good for grad school apps, so I filed a patent in 2005. And it actually, we're just hearing it got approved. So it's about to issue.
Come on, that's great.
Yeah, and it looked good for grad school. I was like, I didn't take it seriously. I mean,
6 years later,
and used an attorney, went through the whole process. But it was talking around all about location-aware messaging.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, that's become big. So.
Well, visionary, Chris. That's very cool. So, I mean, but is there a philosophy with your investors around IP based?
No, we're not going to be an IP driven company. We're going to be a product driven company, and we need to build a brand. And I think we have this open window where the industry is wide open. Where we still have the whole feature phone market out there that's moving to smartphones. We're kind of Wild West in our space for a few years, and I think we win on product and marketing.
I love it, man. I like you know what, Chris. I'm so pissed that we're running out of time, man. Yeah, I know we're up against a hard stop. So this has been incredible. I think we got through maybe one of the two questions, one or two of the questions that I actually sent off to you. But it's just such a great conversation. First of all, I'd love to have you back because I want to follow you as you go through this transition from what you're doing.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks for having me.
Into what you're going to become, which is cool. I love your headspace of this, and certainly you've got the pedigree with the investors that you've got and the struggles that you've gotten to get here, which is just such a great story. And so I wish you all the best success. How do people find out more about what you guys are doing?
So you can go to our website at life360.com, but I would suggest just going to the App Store and downloading our application, because that's 99% of our users now is all on mobile.
All on mobile now. So it's available iOS and Android, and obviously there's a feature phone version as well, right?
Yeah, but you have to download it on iOS and Android, and then you can invite someone who's on a feature phone.
On a feature phone. This is incredible. So go to life360.com or just search for Life360.
Yep, Life360, all one word in the App Store.
In the App Store, and go and take a look at it and start, I guess, following your spouse around. That's the best way to do it to start, isn't it?
Yeah, to start, if that's the only person with a smartphone.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. Look, Chris, I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing some of this and your insight. And it's such a great story. And I can't wait to hear more about this as I follow up with you in the coming months as you go.
Thanks. It'll be great to stay in touch.
I love it. I've been speaking with Chris Hulls, who is the co-founder and the CEO of Life360. Go to life360.com to get a little bit more information about them. But if you're convinced on this, just go to the App Store or the marketplace and download. Just search for Life360 and download the application and start using it. I'd love to hear your feedback once you start using it. Whether this is something that you want to use, that you love. I'm sure that Chris would love to hear back from you as well on that.
Yeah, we always want comments.
That's great. Chris, man, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate your time. Really appreciate it. It's been great.
Thank you. Take care.
You guys who are watching, listening, thank you so much for doing both or one or the other. If you have any feedback, reach out at untetheredgmail.com. I'd love to hear your comments and suggestions. And that's it. We'll see you next time on untethered.tv. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks. Take care.